me take a moment to step back and see what has happened in banking and financial services. For 100 years or more, banking was a very sort of, I would say, a very sort of privileged, highbrow profession. In fact, I like to say that banking and financial services, or banks in particular, they were like churches and temples. People went to them with a lot of respect. If you are a customer of a large bank, and I'm sure this is not yet changed in parts of India as well, the bank manager in the regional branch, the zonal branch or office is a bit of a mini emperor, right? Or empress. And you go there and you pay your respects and you kind of hope to get serviced. This is how banking has been. It's always been a very highbrow profession, a highbrow sector. So the idea was that banks were very important institutions. They were top-down directed. They were focused on their internal policy, and in some sense, they were in a command and control world. They dictated policy to the consumer, and you were kind of felt privileged to be able to have a bank account, and and you would go stand in line to get service for your banking needs, and that has been the history for many, many decades. Institutions would prescribe. So the banking institutions were like powerful, and they wrote the rules of engagement by which the consumer and the so-called customer would engage with them. And I still remember very well, even in my own young days, childhood or college days, was going to the bank, getting a token for a teller, and then waiting in line. God knows when you get your service done, get your cash out of a human teller. And those are like really clear, vivid memories of banks being very highbrow institutions. And consumers had no choice but to comply. Much like a temple or a church, when you go, the timing is fixed. You can't go at the wrong time. You have to go at the right time. You have to stand in a queue. You go in there, they tell you what the entrance is. They tell you what the exit is. They tell you, how you can worship, how long you can be. And those of you who've been to some of the biggest temples in the country, and you know exactly what I mean. There are protocols of engagement which you can't violate. And if you violate them, they'll just throw you out of the temple because you are essentially in non-compliance, right? So that was the model of banking and financial service for the longest time. But what has fintech done? Fintech has turned all this upside down, and the so-called church is now just a bazaar. It's just a marketplace. It's a noisy, chaotic marketplace. It is no longer structured, no longer top-down command control. The institution does not control the behavior of the consumer. The consumer decides how to engage with the institution. So it's gone from being top-down to bottom-up, from inside-out rule prescription to outside-in engagement. Fintechs want to have conversations with their customers, not dictate anything to the customers. And consumers also have choice. They want to decide where they want to buy what financial product from. It's all gotten unbundled. The bank as a single source of bundled financial services have gotten unbundled. And UPI is a good example. We'll talk a lot about that today. So instead of the previous model of the church and this temple, where the person who was getting the service, the consumer had to comply with the institution. Now the institution is complying with the consumer's needs or adapting to the consumer's expectation, right? This idea of mobile banking, the idea that the phone is your bank and the bank is 24/7. You want to get service at 2 a.m. in the morning. If there's no bot or there's no help desk, you think your bank is bad and you don't think this bank is worth it. So there's a whole set of things that have changed. Democratization of banking may be another way to put it. It's very clear that the power has moved out of the hands of these institutions into the hands of those who are consuming it. And that tilt of power and the shift of the power is what we are going to talk about.